Gather round, dads, it's time for a tale. Hand me a book and a warm pint of ale. Let's discuss writing and the literary gods with Dan Roberts on the Dadlit Pod.
Welcome to the Dadlit Pod, the literary podcast for people who remember Dante's Down the Hatch, which used to be in Atlanta's underground. You could see alligators, and it was a giant pirate ship that was uh, built into the subway. This is a true story, by the way, and Mike Cahoon is going to back that up for me.
Oh
Today, I'm
yeah.
joined by indie author Mike Cahoon. His debut fantasy novel, The Scion Conspiracy, came out on October 1st, 2025. It is the first in the Crucible of Legacy series. Mike is exploring a Game of Thrones style fantasy series set during the Age of Exploration, which is way more than George could come up with because George is soft. And Mike and I are going to talk about that because whenever I get a fantasy author, I insist that they answer for George's failures and explain how they would fix it. Welcome, Mike.
Hey, that's a great intro right there. Starting off with a bang. Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, Mike, you're a dad. You're
Yes.
living in Atlanta,
Yep.
hot
I have.
Atlanta.
Yeah. That's what they call it back in the day, back in the Dizzy, right?
But
Yeah.
you grew up in hot Atlanta.
Yeah, man. I am a rare native. I grew up in the Decatur area, which is like, in town. And it's funny, growing up in the city, you get really defensive when people say like, "Oh, I'm from Atlanta," and then they're actually from somewhere that's like an hour north of the city or like, way
Buckhead.
out in the suburbs. Yeah. No, I grew
Buckhead
up.
like my cousins.
No, I'm from the actual city.
Yes.
But yeah, no, I'm a dad. I got two kids, both young, very young toddlers. So I'm in the thick of it.
You're right in the center.
Yeah,
And you have two toddlers, and yet
yeah,
you produced volume one of an epic fantasy series,
yes, sir.
which is quite impressive. I'm going to say because I find very little time to do anything, and I have a 5 year old. So if you're up for it, tell me about the Scion Conspiracy, Crucible of Legacy, Book One.
Yeah, for sure, man. So it's like you said, I mean, you gave a really good summary. It's kind of like a Game of Thrones, grimdark fantasy style, but my twist on it is that I set it during an age of exploration. So think of early days right after the colonization or the found after they found America and they established colonies and all that, when everybody was kind of fighting over the territories and it was still undecided. You had France up in Canada, what's now Canada, and
Yep.
you had everybody else kind of fighting over everything else, and there's all these different nations, and then of course you have the people that actually were here before,
Mm.
also in the mix. And so the Scion Conspiracy starts off in the old, what is the old world, and the nobles and stuff. They find out through a series of events that there's this group of people working in the shadows to try to do something. They're kidnapping magically gifted children. They're hiring all these mercenaries, and nobody knows. They can't figure out what exactly is going on, but they know it's something big, and so they kind of start to different people start to investigate it, and it kind of leads them down this road where it's a much bigger thing than they think, and it really changes the trajectory of the series is that it changes the way that the entire world, it as they know it, and power structures and all that work is are going to work. That's kind of the idea.
That's interesting. I was reading it and I was like, they're taking the kids.
Right.
And I thought that it would be a standard. They're taking the kids, someone's going to go rescue the kids story. And then I realized that there was an underlying element of, oh, well, this is an epic fantasy. It's going to spiral. We're only in book one.
Right.
And fundamentally, you had uh, two characters that I are the protagonists, if you will, which
Right.
is a prince whose father has decided he needs to settle down,
Yeah.
and the son of a shipping magnate
Yeah.
who has been told, you're taking over dad's business.
Yep.
Tell me
So
about, well, I know how that finds expression in, making a story about colonialism, right?
right.
Because if you want to get away from your dad, colonialism is a great way to do that.
Yeah.
Yes. But fundamentally, the other question underlying that is what inspired the fantasy setting that you decided? I think as you've described, it's the colonization of America. But give me a little more on how that fantasy setting presents itself.
So I grew up reading a lot of fantasy, sci-fi, horror. I always have the holy trinity: fantasy, sci-fi, horror. But
Mhm.
as I've gotten older, I really enjoy a lot of things like history and, autobiographies and, just all sorts of things, learning about the real world as, and also kind of like what inspired a lot of fantasy authors. Like, for instance, like you said, George R. R. Martin, he was inspired a lot by the War for the Roses or the War of the Roses.
Yeah.
And, I think that's a really interesting setting. And one thing that I really wanted to do with my series was explore a setting that I hadn't seen a lot of fantasy tackle yet. And
Nice. Yeah.
everyone kind of does either there's a lot of medieval Europe. I mean, that's kind of the standard
Mhm.
format. And then there's a lot of, there's getting to be a lot more like Asians inspired fantasy and things like that. But one time frame you don't see a lot of is that transitional time, right?
Yep.
From, when things are when two cultures have to interact for the first time, or when a new land is discovered for the first time. I think that in our history is some of the most crazy and interesting changes happen, and I mean truly like world changing things. And when you're talking about epic fantasy, that's always the selling point, right? You're never, well, nowadays there's like cozy fantasy, but traditionally you're never following some
Yes.
guy working on his farm. It's always world changing events. So to me, setting an epic fantasy story during an age of exploration seemed like a natural kind of place to put it. But I had never really seen that before. So to me, it seemed like a really good opportunity.
Yeah, and so you have some really terrific prose
Thank
in
you. I
this.
appreciate
I
that.
I really like it. What would you say? What books did you read in anticipation of that that really inspired you to create that vibrant realm of?
Well, I don't know if you're familiar with Redwall, the series Redwall, but
I've never read Redwall,
really,
and
okay. So
everyone tells me I think about books that I should read to my daughter, and then I'm like, oh, well, I'll read Redwall, and then everyone's like, she's 5, don't read Redwall to a
like 10.
5-year-old.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like 10, yeah. It's there's a good bit of violence in it. I mean, it's not like gory, it's for kids, but I mean,
Yep.
it's definitely like PG, not G. You know what I
Yep.
mean? But no, I was just gonna make a joke that Redwall, if anyone who's read it, it's Brian Jacques, he wrote it originally for blind kids, and so there's a ton of description. It's just description
Wow.
of food and the environment, and that was like the first fantasy series that I read as a kid, like as a little young kid, and it was like a foundational one for me. So that the I have a soft spot in my heart for like heavy description, and I know a lot of people nowadays don't like that, but like I like
Hmm.
when people paint a picture. Same with
I
like
do as well, by
yeah.
the way. That's why I liked the way that you did your settings and the way you introduced your settings in your book. It kind of reminded me of George, and
Yeah,
and recognizing that George does that for a reason, I was
right.
interested in your underlying methodology.
So, like I said, I really enjoy reading authors who put you into the setting. And I don't mind. I know a lot of people don't love to read super long books, but like
Hmm.
I grew up reading like Tad Williams. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but like his books are humongous and
Yep.
they're large fantasy tomes. And then I read, like you said, George R. R. Martin I've read, uh, and then Stephen King. I'm a huge fan of Stephen King, and some of his books are just absolute massive chunkers, you know, and obviously things like Lord of the Rings. But it's like I I think fantasy, if you're going to write that epic style fantasy, it kind of demands that word count, right?
Yep.
And trying to trying to cut that out is it creates something interesting. Like you see a lot of modern fantasy that's very fast paced and it's very interesting, and I do like that. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just it feels very different, right? When you're reading it.
Hmm.
So
Well,
I wanted to kind of, for me, I wanted to kind of, you know, tell a not so much a traditional style epic fantasy, but be a little bit in that vein, you know?
yeah, I mean, this is a thing that I talk about quite a bit, which is that you bring up Stephen King. Um, Pet Cemetery is 140,000 words.
Right.
If you were to give that story to an editor today, and they'd say, well, the truck should have run over the kid in the first 15 minutes. You know what I mean? Or should have run over the cat in the
Right.
first 15 pages. Um, what do you think is the value? Because you're an independent author.
Right.
Did you attempt to bring this book to the traditional market, or did you just say, look, I want to write epic fantasy. The only real way to do that today is through independent publishing?
So when I wrote this book, I didn't know anything about the publishing industry, to be honest with you. I just wanted to
Hmm.
write the book. And so when I started looking into publishing, the only thing I mean, I knew indie publishing existed, but I didn't know anything about it. And so I really, I started querying agents and stuff like that. And I got some feedback. The funniest feedback I got was this book is great, but you don't have any social media presence. So, we can't
Yeah,
like take a risk on you because you're just because I was barely on social media before I started doing the thing. I had a Facebook and I had Instagram, but I checked them like once a week, twice a week, you
yeah.
know. And now I'm on every social media and it's like a whole second job.
It
But
is like a whole second job. Yes.
but no, I mean, I got about a few months of querying in, and then I just was like, after learning more about the indie scene and learning more about who, how epic fantasy nowadays was getting published and what was getting published, I was like, I think I'm better off going indie. And then also the idea of having full control over the story and having full control. Because I definitely heard from a lot of people that, traditional publishers for your first book, they're going to want you to have under 100,000 words, even, especially even epic fantasy. I mean, if you were another genre, they'd probably want you to have under 80, 70, 80,000 words. And then, they're going to want it to be a standalone with serious potential. That's always the catchphrase. They say this book should stand on its own, but if it's a
Hmm.
hit, and I'm like, that's just not the way I envision the series. And so I decided I'm just gonna indie publish this series, and then we'll see where I go from there. But I wanted to put this book out and this series out the way I wanted it. You know,
That's interesting. What, you know, inspires you to be an independent guy like that?
I mean,
You've got to
honestly,
have some sort of underlying, drive.
I mean, I've always been kind of a self starter. What's the word? I like to have full responsibility for
So you're a
myself.
control freak.
Not necessarily a control freak, more of just like, if I'm gonna fail, I prefer to fail because I messed up, not because somebody else did something wrong. You know what I mean?
That's a very glass half empty perspective.
Well, it's also there's also an option. You can also look at it as a glass half full because you can
Yep.
put as much time and effort and stuff as you want. Whereas, you know, if you're relying on someone like a publishing company, for instance, to do stuff for you, and they say, hey, we're gonna have an editor come in and cut out a third of this book because we think that's what's gonna sell.
Oh, yeah.
Or we say, hey, we're gonna do this cover because we think this is what's popular right now. You know what I mean? Or just whatever. We need you to have this character be be this way, or we want you to change this because we think this will be popular. It's like if that if I did that and then the book failed, I would never know if my original version was good or not.
Mhm.
Whereas if you do it yourself and it sells, then you can do it, and then you can go in and you can advertise it however you want. You can change things. You can do whatever you need to do. You know.
Yeah. So, how much did your parents love you that they instilled this sense of confidence
No, my
in
my
you?
parents were great, man. They were both really supportive. My
Mhm.
dad, I will say, my dad was actually the one who got me into reading genre fiction, sci-fi, fantasy, all that stuff. We as kids, we would read. He would read us books, and then as we got older, we would like me and my brother and my dad. I say we, me and my dad and my brother. We would read a book, and then we would pass on to the next person, and then he would pass on to the next person. So all three of us would read it, like we read several series that way. And like we
Mhm.
read the Dresden Files, for instance. That's a big one. And then, we read like all the stuff by the Eddings and this the what's the name? The uh God, I'm struggling now. Shannara. We read all of Shannara that way,
Oh, yes.
And
Yes.
so, yeah, so it's like my parents were very supportive, but they also like they very much instilled like a lot of the loves of some of the things that I'm into when I was a kid, kind of like a built-in community, I guess you would say.
Yeah. So, would you say you came from like a reading household?
Yeah, definitely. I read a pretty good amount, as a parent and author. I don't have as much time as I want. My dad is the craziest person I've ever seen when it comes to reading. He reads on like a Kindle now, but he used to
Mhm.
when I was a kid, he used to go to the library and take out a stack of books. He
Mhm.
like 5 or 6 books, and he would read them in 2 weeks and take them back and get 5 or 6 more books. It's crazy. He's a fast reader and just always reading a book all the time.
Mhm.
So
So you got the kids, and we're
yeah.
we're doing an episode a little late, because you were putting the kids down. You
Yeah.
reading to the kids?
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, every night. Every night
Yeah.
that I'm home, but my wife reads to him when I'm not here. So
Yeah, it's the
we try to
same.
read every night.
Same in my household.
Nice.
Reading every night. I think it was, there was an article today on Real Clear Books where they were interviewing a prominent author, and he was saying, well, in my house, there's a rule where you don't have to go to bed if you're reading.
Yep. I saw that.
Yeah, so you read that as
I
well.
did read the
Yeah,
same. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I read the
yeah,
same
yeah.
article.
Yeah, and I think fundamentally that's a terrific philosophy. I mean, if you want to create the setting and the inspiration for someone to read, it's it's great. When are your kids going to be old enough to read your series?
I mean, it's definitely 18 plus. There's a lot of violence, kidnapping, all sorts of stuff. But I will say, I love the author
Oh, it's
Joe.
the same with me, by the way. It's 100%.
I love the author Joe Abercrombie, and he had a funny interview where someone asked him the same question, and he said, he's got I think 3 or 4 kids, and he said none of my kids want to read my books. He said they think I'm the lamest person ever. He's like they've been more than welcome to read my books, and none of them have any interest in it. So I was
Yeah.
like, I have a strong feeling that no matter how many books I write, by the time they get old enough to read them, they're going to be like, yeah, it's dad's lame stuff.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you're like, yeah, if Mike Cahoon was the number one biggest author in the world tomorrow, and the kids were like, yeah, Dad, can you set up the slip and slide because that's much more important.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, so it's sort of I think of it, well, my daughter is quite obsessed with participating in the book.
Nice.
She wants to type out sentences on the computer, and then she gets tired, and she's like, "Yeah, I don't want to do this anymore." Um, but to that extent, do I think that she would ever sit down and read it? Uh, no.
You hear about you see interviews with like Hollywood celebrities, and you're like, that's the coolest guy ever. And
Yeah.
then, or whoever, cool chick, she's in a million movies, whatever. And then they talk about their kids. And I swear, every parent has the same story. They're always like,
Oh
no matter
yeah.
how famous, no matter how rich, they're always like, yeah, my kids think I'm lame as hell.
Oh yeah, they don't care. They don't care. Ironically, I took my daughter to my real job,
Oh,
which
yeah.
is in a cubicle, in a dingy office building, for like take your daughter to work day. And she was just like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. They give you your own space. You have an infinite access to pencils and pens. Look at all these pencils and pens that are just in this shelf. This is insane. I could just draw all day. And I was like, oh my God, don't, don't do this to yourself.
I have a little bit of an unfair advantage in that realm because my day job, I'm a firefighter, so it's like
Oh, well,
if
you
there's
buried the lead.
if there's any job that kids are immediately like interested in, any real job, I feel like it's that, maybe like astronaut, cowboy, something like
Oh
that.
yeah, followed by firefighter. Well, let's
Right?
talk if you don't mind, let's talk about that.
Yeah, for sure, man.
What was the inspiration to become a firefighter?
So I went to college and I got a 4-year degree. I focused in English and literature. And I enjoyed writing. I knew I enjoyed reading and writing. And then I got out of college and I got a desk job. I didn't really do anything with my degree. I got a normal sales desk job. Did that for a
Yeah.
year. Hated it. Hated sitting at a desk all day. And when I was younger, I always wanted to be a firefighter. I wanted to be a writer too, but I wanted to be a firefighter. And I was like, well, this would be the time to do it, when I'm still
Hmm.
young in my early 20s, and I'm going to give it a shot. And so while I was still working that job, I started applying to all these fire departments and like going on my lunch breaks or saying I was going on sales calls and stuff and going to do like, the physical assessments and stuff instead.
Yeah.
And
What do they require? What's the time on a mile run these days for a firefighter?
So they didn't have so what they do, they don't have that. It's not like a military test. So what they
Oh,
do
okay.
is they have almost like it's called a PAT, and it's a
Yeah.
physical agility test, and it's you wear the when you're doing it to get into the fire academy, you wear the pack and you wear the helmet and the gloves. You don't wear the full turnout gear, and you do a series of events, right? And it's
Hmm.
like a dummy drag. You go up like seven. For us, it was like you go up 7 flights of stairs, and you have to like do a bunch. You have to do all these different things. You have to hoist something up to the top of the building with a rope.
Yep.
And basically, the better your time, the higher you score. Um, and then there's that, and there's a written test, there's an interview, there's obviously like a drug test, and all these other things. So it's a whole process.
Hmm.
And if you're working for a local county, that's usually very slow.
Yes. Yeah. So I have two firefighters in my mother's family.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. And, well, I should say three. My cousin Erin, who's a special needs person, the daughter of my Uncle Billy. She also is a volunteer firefighter
Wow. It's
and
awesome.
in the town of Buxton, Maine. And we're
Okay.
all super proud of her. And so I grew up with firefighter culture, with
Nice.
everyone carrying around the beeper, ready to go.
Right.
And my truck that I was obsessed with as a young boy was Engine 6, which was a pumper
Nice.
based out of Thornton Heights in South Portland, Maine.
Okay.
And yeah, no. So I was obsessed with firefighting. Never got into it. I have a weird heart condition. I'm a human myotonic goat. So I have I have bizarro rapid drops in blood pressure. Um, but yeah, that's awesome, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, I've been doing it for almost 15 years now. Or
How's the wife handle that?
well, I'll tell you, so I went from I worked about 10 years in a very busy in the city department. And that's what
Yep.
I was doing when we met. And when I was younger and single, it was the coolest job of all time. And
I bet.
once we started to have kids, it became less and less cool over time when I'd be out on a fire until shift change and then come home and be exhausted. And then so I now work actually I'm a firefighter on a military base outside of the city,
Oh,
and
okay. Yeah.
it's a much less, I don't want to say it's a less dangerous job because there's planes and stuff, but it's much lower frequency.
Yeah.
And
Well, it's
it's
regular. It's
yeah,
regular. Yeah.
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 So she's pretty happy about that. But I'm still on the 24/48 schedule, and that's a little tough with kids. It has its ups and downs. There's
Yeah.
you're off during the, like, right now one of my kids is still young enough to be in daycare, and we only have to do part-time daycare because I'm home so much,
Yeah.
during the week. But I work a lot of holidays and nights and weekends and stuff like that. So it's like, there's pluses and minuses.
So here's the next question. When are you going to write the Firefighter uh, fantasy novel?
So I don't have a fantasy novel inspired by firefighting necessarily, but I have thought I have a goal, a loose goal of writing in all three of my big favorite genres, sci-fi, fantasy, and horror.
Yeah.
And I had the idea of a sci-fi novel, uh, and this, it would be focused around a space rescue crew,
Hmm.
and that would be kind of vaguely drawing on some of my experiences being like a firefighter.
Hmm.
So that's
So
the and that has not been started writing yet. That's just a idea in the ether. So,
what's your biggest save?
uh, gosh, let's
You've been
see.
at it for a while. So,
Yeah, I mean, I've been on several. I've been on several fires where we've had victims that we've pulled out. Me and obviously other people, not me by myself. You're always part of a
mhm.
team.
Yeah.
Very rarely do you see the Chicago fire style. One guy goes in there and pulls someone out completely by himself, and it's you know, because very rarely are you by yourself, in a
Yes.
fire.
Well, I was going to
Um,
say my uncle, who was my firefighting idol when I was
mhm.
young, when I was a kid. He was both a volunteer firefighter and a mortician.
Oh wow.
So his greatest save was not really a save. He pulled a body out of the lake,
Oh wow.
and of course, uh, his sort of stories about kind of the nature of that work, the nature of showing up, and how it shapes your consciousness, particularly around um, human beings and human loss, have always intrigued me. It's always intrigued me. I've always thought it was an interesting job and an interesting idea.
Well, I do think, I was talking to someone about this a while ago, and I think they were asking me about why I was interested in, dark fantasy, grim dark fantasy, whatever you want to call it, as opposed to more traditional epic stuff, if that's what I kind of grew up reading. And I said, as an adult who's been doing firefighting for so long, and kind of seen the extreme highs and extreme lows of, the human experience, right? I think grimdark and like more modern dark fantasy style stuff is it hits a little closer to home and hits a little bit more realistic. Because I'll always love epic fantasy. Like I said, that's what I grew up reading, and it's a super close to my heart. But I will say, I find it less compelling now after doing this
Mm,
job for so long, because it's when you pick up a book and you kind of know the good guys are going to always going to win and everything's going to work out, it doesn't feel as interesting.
mhm,
It doesn't feel as true to life. Whereas like if you pick up something where it's like this is very much, we don't know what's going to happen, and we don't know if the good guy, good intentions don't necessarily matter, and you don't get to retry if you mess up. You
mm,
know, I've said before on another show that grimdark fantasy is a fantasy that's focused on consequences, right?
mhm,
And I think that is what makes it so interesting and what makes it so compelling, and why I enjoy writing it, you know,
mhm.
and reading it.
Yeah, uh, it's interesting because I feel like the firefighter experience lends itself to noir. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
I could definitely see
Because
that.
once the house catches on fire, there's no going back. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
The once a thing is on fire, you can rebuild it, but the interior and the memory and those elements are gone. And
Right.
that's really fascinating to me from a literary perspective. And I've thought about this a lot, which is that um, there are a couple of areas that don't get well represented because they're very visual. They're riots and fires in
Hmm.
literature. It's incredibly difficult to represent fire in literature or a riot in literature because they are sort of very visual forces.
Right.
So that's intriguing. Yeah.
Have you ever read any Joe Abercrombie at all?
No, I've never read Joe Abercrombie, but I'm very familiar with how successful he's been.
So there's all these rules for literature, right? And one of them is
Mhm.
that head hopping. You know what head hopping is, where you switch POVs
Yes, yes.
constantly, like, and it's
Well, in the
they
1980s, they used to head hop all the time.
right.
And what was I going to say? Lucas Schaefer's book that just won the Kirkus Review Prize. I
Hmm.
interviewed Lucas, um, which is kind of it's a literary boxing mystery type novel. Has
That
a
sounds
ton of head
interesting.
hopping. Yeah, it has a
Yeah.
ton of head hopping in it. Um,
So
but yeah, yeah, keep going. Yes.
so Joe Abercrombie, in one of his books, I think it's the fourth one in his main series, he introduces this technique of head hop, like one chapter where he just head hops constantly, and it's always the first one is in a battle, right? And so he
Mhm.
changes POVs constantly throughout the battle, and then in another book, he's doing it. The chapter is taking place during a riot,
Yeah.
and it works so incredibly well because it creates that sense of like like just chaos and con- kinetic feeling where you're like
Hmm.
thrown around and you don't know exactly what's going on. I will say he's a really good writer. I don't know that everybody could pull that off,
Yeah.
but it works super well. And like you're talking about, it's one technique that people say don't do, but when you're trying to get across something like a riot or a fire or something, or like a battle, a war, something that's really difficult to truly like get across the feeling of, it
Yeah.
seems like it seems to work pretty well, from what I've seen. And it seems
Yeah.
like,
I
yeah, go
mean,
ahead.
fundamentally, um, those two things are disjointed. They're
Right,
chaotic.
right.
And what is writing but creating order and clarity? And the idea of sort of describing and being clear with what is going on while also communicating the omniscient difficulty of keeping track of what's going on around you is very difficult. I think this is why writers struggle with this.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And I think one thing that's really interesting about trying to get across things that are fundamentally difficult to get across,
Yeah.
is that there's so many different ways you can do it. You can do it with heavy description, you can do it with the actual style of the prose, short sentences, lots of pauses, lots of or lots of breaks, or you can do it with like we were talking about POV switches. You can do it with uh really focusing in on one character's internal mental state. And no one way is right. It just depends on if the author can pull it off, you
Yeah.
know? Because we were, like you're saying, you're talking about fires and riots and wars. I mean, I've also seen books where they focus on one character's POV and they get across, and it's some, in a war and a battle, and it's amazing. It works really, really well. So
Hmm.
it all depends on, I think, what the author is capable of and what their talents, where their talents lie. You know?
Hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. Well, Mike, pitch me where the rest of the series is going. Sell the Scion Conspiracy, Crucible of Legacy.
So, Crucible of Legacy is the fundamental thing that I really wanted to explore with this series was it's right there in the name, right? It's the idea of a when this new world is found and it fundamentally changes everything about the way that power works in the world and the way that these empires and kingdoms and stuff they all how they all function because suddenly you have this new element, right? And it is the crucible of the legacy. It's the place that everybody is trying to go and set their stake and create their future, right? And everybody knows that this new place, this new land, this new opportunity is their chance, and once it's gone, it's kind of gone, right? So my series is really taking that sense of court politics and fantasy epicness where they're fighting and they're trying to figure out the end of the world, but it's putting that spin on it of we're we're kind of doing all of this and we're in a situation in which we're all fighting over this new place, this new land, and everything is changing extremely fast. And it's whoever can kind of come out on top of this chaos that's been created by this situation, right?
Yep.
And I think the way that the series progresses and ends, I think people will be very surprised, but also I think it'll be a very satisfying ending because I'm going to my plan is for it to feel unexpected, but also kind of inevitable, if that makes sense.
Yep. So this is the question that I give to all fantasy authors, particularly epic fantasy authors.
Sure.
How do you fix the winds of winter and make it happen? Because I want to read it. I'm going to be honest with you. I've been waiting a long time. I got the Dance with Dragons the day it came out. My copy was signed by George. He was in Natick, Massachusetts, and he was signing it with there were a zillion people waiting outside. How do you make the winds of winter happen?
So, are you asking me how we get George to write it, or are you asking how I would finish the series?
Well, this is what I'll say. I have, I'm on record
Mhm.
saying that George needs to break it into four sub books. They're called East, West, North, and South,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
East being what's going on in the East, South being what's going on in the South, with the introduction of what's going on in King's Landing, etc. West being what's going on in the West with Sam Tarley the uh, going to become a maester, which is never actually going to happen because there's not enough time for that to occur.
Right.
And then the North, where, as we all know, Jon Snow is kind of dead. And, not to ruin it, folks, but you should have already read it at this point.
Well,
So
it,
that's how I think he should break it all out into those four areas, release them one at a time because he clearly is having trouble somewhere along the line, but we're going on 15 years. This is insane.
so
Yes.
I'm assuming you've watched the show,
Yeah, it was
right?
garbage. is complete garbage. This is one of the
So,
worst. Well, I mean, it's what happened with Lost, right?
oh my God. So sorry. Side note. So Lost,
Yes.
I've said this before, but Lost has simultaneously the worst ending to an ongoing series and the funniest ending to an ongoing series
Yes. Yeah.
because I don't know if you were watching it when it was actually on, but
Oh, I was. Yeah.
when it was actually on, they did all these interviews with the creators, right? And and they were always saying like this series is based in science, like we could explain everything. They kept
Oh,
having
they
more and
can't
more
explain
mysteries.
anything.
They were
Yeah.
so if you remember, like I remember we were really into it. Like my family was really into it, and like we were
Yep.
watching the videos with the creators, and it was like they were like, oh yeah, we have a plan, we've mapped all this out, we can explain it. And then the last season, the last like couple of episodes, they're like, we can't explain any of this. It's we didn't have a plan. Like it was almost like a 6 year or whatever troll that they did on just the general population. And it's like, it's crazy looking back on it because they were so diehard about like the fact that they're like, we have a plan for this. We can explain everything.
Yeah.
We know where all these mysteries end up. Like, sorry, that's just my tangent about it
No,
because
no, no, 100%. It's the same with Game of Thrones. The
so
underlying point being that they wrote a check that they couldn't cash. And I understand philosophically that the cost of keeping the actors on set in Iceland and the cost of, keeping everything alive was exorbitantly expensive. But the point is, the whole underlying idea of the books, as George articulated at the time, was that it was impossible to represent them in film. So
right.
if you can't make that happen, if you let that get out of control, whose
Right.
fault is that?
Well, also, um, didn't HBO like say that they gave them like an unlimited budget or something? Like, didn't they
Oh
basically
yeah,
say
yeah,
like
yeah.
that they would just let them keep filming and let them keep doing whatever for as many seasons or whatever as they needed to finish
Yes.
it? And instead of doing that, they just rushed through it at the very
Oh yeah,
at the
yeah. They
very
just
end.
blew it. Yeah, yeah.
Um,
No, it was 100% a writer collapse. And then they got
yeah,
a bunch of European artistic directors to come in and do the episodes, which were garbage. I mean,
right.
even they present them as, oh, well, this is the best episode because the character went through this incredible change. And it's like, yeah, but the rational elements of the show that made it interesting and the twists were destroyed by your European director's desire to create emotional resonance.
So I have a theory that you as a fan, I mean, I'm a fan of Game of Thrones, of A Song of Ice and
Oh,
Fire,
I'm a
but
huge fan.
I
Yeah.
think you're gonna hate this theory that I have, and I think the ending that we got in the show was George R. R. Martin's actual ending that he told them.
Everyone keeps saying this. I so disagree. I just
So
disagree.
I think that he told them his plan, not word for word. Don't get me wrong. I'm
Yeah.
not saying he
Yeah.
wrote the script, but I'm saying I think he told them the script, and then they kind of rushed it, and they kind of they didn't do it right. But I
Yeah.
think the general plot points are the same, and then I think he, I hate to say it, but I think he panicked when he saw that everybody hated it, and that's why we haven't gotten anything
This is
since.
this is a very fascinating take. And I hear it and I've thought about this.
Right.
The ending is so bad that the
But it could have
idea
been good. It could have been if it was written by George R. R. Martin and not the hack writers that they got to do it, right? Like
distinctly possible.
if you
Yes.
take the
Yeah.
basic plot points of, Daenerys
Yeah.
finally snapping because of she's been pushed to the edge, and you take,
Yes.
it and then sir, like you can see the gems, the little bits of this could have been a really cool, really interesting storyline. They
Yeah.
try to get everybody to come to Winterfell to fight the Night King, and then Cersei betrays them at the last minute. Those general, like, big plot points are solid, right? But it's the getting there and the things that they did to actually,
Well, this is what I'll say.
right.
The Lyanna Stark having Jon Snow as a baby reveal is a huge mistake, if only because Lyanna's brother, the Sword of the Morning, is still alive.
Yeah,
I'm going to
I
be honest. He's still alive, and his sister is married to the Frogman.
yeah.
That is 100% what's going on. I mean, to that extent, I will say that um, what sort of the challenge that I see is that George is a writer similar to me. I enter in with a vision, and then what happens is what happens. I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. It's just what grows. To that extent, his ability to thread the needle thus far indicates to me that he's gonna pull off something better.
I mean, I would hope so. I mean,
One would hope so. Yes,
right.
yeah.
And I mean, again, I think if I'm right and that he gave them his general plot points, I think if he were to write those books, it could have the
Hmm.
you know, same general idea of what happens, and I think it would be a million times better because, like,
Yeah.
it is the writing that failed those last couple seasons, right?
Oh yeah,
You know,
100%.
so
Well, also condensing a lot of complex elements.
right,
You know what I mean? Yeah, yeah. But
yeah. Everyone's suddenly able to fast travel all over Westeros.
I know, right?
People just
It
show up places.
used to take like a million years to get
Yeah.
everywhere.
I was gonna say and then I mean honestly, like the dialogue in the last couple seasons was like really clunky. A lot of it was, compared
Yeah.
to the first 5 seasons, it got really bad. It started to get really bad towards the end. You know.
Yes. Yeah. So, well, Mike, it's great to have you on.
Thanks, man.
A dad literati supporter, author of The Scion Conspiracy,
Yep.
Crucible of Legacy, Book
Yep.
One,
And I have the prequel novella out now too, the Coldwater Job. That's
The Cold Water Job. You didn't
yeah.
send me the Cold Water
Oh, I thought I
Job.
did.
No, well, that intrigues me. There's a Cold
Okay.
Water Job.
Yeah, so that's a prequel
Interesting.
novella set before the events of the Scion Conspiracy.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it's actually available for free if people who sign up for my newsletter, but it's also available for sale everywhere.
Yeah.
So
Well, first of all, people sign up for Mike's newsletter. How do they get on your newsletter?
MikeCahoon.com/newsletter. You'll find it if you go there. It's pretty obvious right at the top.
Yeah. And how do they find you on Twitter, where you do a lot of good work and engagement?
Thanks, man. Mike Cahoon underscore author or I think I'm M Cahoon underscore author on Twitter. I don't
Yes.
know. Yeah. I was gonna say I'm Mike Cahoon everywhere else, but Twitter I think had a limited characters, so I had to shorten it. But no, yeah, man, I'm on all the social media. You can find me pretty easily. Like I said, I'm kind of everywhere now.
Yep.
In protest, I'm everywhere now.
Also, if you're in Atlanta, you can burn down your house and Mike will come and save you.
Allegedly. I don't know if I'm on duty that day. Um, If you don't
No
mind,
guarantees. No
yeah,
guarantees.
if you don't mind, if we have a few minutes, I'd like to shout out. I'm also in a anthology series that's
Oh
coming out
yeah,
here
tell me
pretty
about
soon.
that. Yeah.
So it's called The Rings of Adventure. I'm in it with like 30 other indie authors. It's a
Hmm.
Kickstarter. It'll be, a whole bunch of short stories. My short story actually takes place in the Crucible of Legacy universe. So if you read the book and you want to get that little extra bit, that's in there too. But yeah, man, it's awesome. It's sci-fi, fantasy, horror, romance, even a couple of those. It'll be the Kickstarter will be launching on September 1st, and there's some pretty great prizes or not prize rewards for backing it. We have
Is that the one
ebooks.
that Jamie Bryden is in too?
Yes, yeah, I think
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
And then we got Mike Molman, Rosera Bushy, Tim Robert, a bunch of people. I mean,
All of the
yeah,
dead literati are in
yeah. I
that.
was gonna say, man, like I think a lot of people that have been on this show before are in
Yeah,
it.
I was gonna say I see it all the time, and I'm like, oh yeah, Dad Literati
Yeah,
gonna be on Kickstarter. So say it again, just so people can go to Kickstarter and
yeah.
find it and make it happen.
It's called the Rings of Adventure anthology, and it's on Kickstarter. You can follow it now. It officially launches September 1st. And yeah, man, I've read some of the stories from some of the other people, and they're pretty awesome. So you'll definitely get some good stuff if you check it out.
Nice. Well, Mike, thank you so much for coming on. And by the way, thank you for your service as a firefighter.
Thanks, man.
I mean, obviously writing a book is meaningful, but also putting out fires is is equivalently meaningful.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate that. It's always funny when people say thank you for your service because I've been doing this job for a long time and I really enjoy doing this job. So, when I think about the fact that I left what a lot of people consider a cushy desk job to be a firefighter, and I 100,000% prefer running into burning buildings to sitting in an office all day.
Well, I can
So
empathize because I sit in an office and then I look out forlornly at burning office buildings and think, oh, I'd rather be in that burning one.
I was gonna say, where are you living? Are you in Detroit, where there are a lot of burning office buildings just all the
No, no,
time?
no. Just joking. But thanks a lot, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. It's been a blast.
This has been an episode of Dad Lit Pod with Mike Cahoon. Go out, check out his book, The Scion Conspiracy, Crucible of Legacy, Book One. All the best.
Our time together has come to an end. It's time to return to your wife, kids, and friends. It's time to pick up those books you forgot while you wait for the next Dad Lit Pod.